You're listening to Never Heard of It, a Night Shift Radio production.
Just saw an ad on IMDb for something with Idris Elba called Concrete Cowboy, and
Oh, yeah. What is that?
So Idris Elba and Lorraine Toussaint, and a teenager discovers the world of urban horseback riding when he moves in with his estranged father in North Philadelphia. But like just this like still image of the two of them riding horses in like a modern city just looks fucking dope as hell. And now I'm definitely going to watch it. Oh, Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things is the kid.
Oh, yo, Method Man is in this movie too.
Hell yes.
That is fucking wild.
So it's going to be April 2nd on Netflix. So yes, it will be somewhere I can watch, and I will be watching this.
Nice. Oh, that's like this week.
Jesus, it really
in
is.
in podcast time, in real world time, that's like a week and a half.
Yeah. So I would absolutely not classify myself as someone who relies on like routine and habit and whatnot. Like,
sure,
I if anything, I feel like I actively seek to not have those things.
Okay.
But today, due to a scheduling conflict with a guest for Left of the Dial, another Night Shift Radio original that I co-host, we had to flip-flop our recording. And like, so I have like the one thing that I guess I kind of do as routine is my Sunday afternoons. Like mornings are usually like kind of chill. In fact, we got bikes yesterday. For the first time since our bikes were stolen a year and a half ago. I think we talked about that on this show. We got brand new bikes, and so we went on a nice long bike ride this morning, got coffee and breakfast, and it was great. And we rode down by the river and like did the whole thing. So that was what our morning was dedicated to. And I came back and like, okay, I'm gonna watch the movie because it's what I watched the movie, and then I come here into the office and I sit and listen to the record that we're going to talk about for Left of the Dial in the evening and kind of prepare myself for that. And sometimes I do a little gaming while I do that. And then, 4 o'clock rolls around and we have our recording session and we bullshit for a while. And then I go and I eat a little dinner and maybe listen one more time to the record. And then I sit down and record Left of the Dial. And that is how my evening goes. That is like the entire second half of my Sunday.
Yeah.
But like you reminded me this afternoon, just as I was sitting down to watch the movie, that we had flip-flopped the recording. I was like, shit. All right, so I got to watch the movie right now. And then I got to go frantically listen to the record. Then I got to record the episode. And we literally finished up, like, ended the Google Meet call 3 minutes before it was time to jump on this call. I'm like, I feel like I'm all out of sorts.
I mean, so that episode you're talking about for Left of the Dial actually just aired a couple of days ago, did it not? Right?
Yeah,
isn't that the episode for this Friday?
Friday, yeah. What was that? The 26th?
Yeah, or the 1, 2, 3.
I literally just had the calendar.
26th.
Yes, the 26th. Yeah, I just had the calendar open, and I was looking at it, and then I closed it. Yeah, that'll be an excellent band out of New York City called Early Riser.
Nice.
We had a couple of members of the band on as guests. They were wonderful. So if you like music and you're not already checking out Left of the Dial, head on over to leftofthedial.fm and check out that episode because it was a good one. It was fun.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, so this is so we talking about your routines, same thing. So I normally have my daughter until about noon on Sundays. Sundays and Mondays are the only 2 days I don't, or half of Sunday and all of Monday are the only 2 days I don't have her when she goes to her mom's, and then I have her the rest of the time. And so normally, like, we wake up, we hang out, I'll make breakfast, maybe we'll play games, maybe we'll watch a little TV or whatever, or if it's nice, we'll, do something. And then at noon, she goes to her mom's. But this morning, actually, we got up super duper early because I went and got my first of 2 COVID vaccine shots.
Nice.
And my arm is
Congratulations.
killing me.
Oh, I bet.
Killing me. But I mean, if it honestly, it feels no different than like I've had flu shots that have had the same reaction before, where it's just you get a sore arm for a few hours.
It's a weird reaction. Like
It is.
I'm sure there's a legit medical explanation for it, but I don't understand it, and I think it's probably sorcery.
Oh, I would imagine it's magic. I can't. There's no other way. Science is magic, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Vaccines are witchcraft. No, that's not true. Get your vaccine.
No, seriously, get your vaccine. Unless you're into witchcraft, then also get your vaccine, and it's a win-win.
Then also do witchcraft.
We're supporting this like wholeheartedly. But yeah, but for some reason, for some reason, I just could not go to sleep last night. I don't know if it was anticipation, like the idea of going to. I mean, there were hundreds of people. It was at our state fairgrounds, the New York State Fairgrounds, and it's huge. It's in a huge expo building, and there were literally hundreds of people there. And I knew it was going to be crazy busy, but appointments were actually really easy to get in my area, and it just stressed me out because I haven't been in a room with that many people in like a year. I mean, even I was on a film just this past year, but like we were very limited to the amount of staff, and like people would rotate out, so I was never in the room with more than, let's say, 20 people at a time, like at best. And even that, like it was really just, we weren't all standing in a room. It's just like a crew would come in and then another crew would come in. We'd never all be there in one shot.
Yeah.
So it was very weird. It was very, like, maybe very anxious, just knowing the whole scenario. But yeah, so it threw me off. So we went, I got the shot, and then, we ended up coming back home, hung out for a bit. Then I took her back to her mom's. And then I was like, oh yeah, normally I watch the movie and then immediately go and record because I have a really bad memory. So I like to watch it right before so I can like remember. Yeah. And I was going to watch it and I was like, oh wait, no, I think we flip-flopped. And I was like, I am totally going to take a nap for 2 hours.
Nice.
And I ended up not taking a nap and watching the movie Hard Target 2, which was just fucking garbage. Just garbage.
Why?
Well,
you know what?
Well, I mean,
no. The question is, why would I ask you why? Because I know why.
Because you know what? This is what I do. But do you remember the Hard Target movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a sequel to it, and I'm not going to go into it because or majorly go into it. But there were so many like insanely stupid things. Like, it was very confusing in the beginning because like there's these 2 guys and they're like MMA fighting, but they're like, they're like looking at each other like, oh, I'm gonna fuck you up, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sure, it's an MMA fight. But like, as the fight's progressing, I'm like, wait, I don't know which one is supposed to be like the one I'm rooting for. Like, I'm really confused because like normally when you cast that, like you cast one of them to like not look like the main character. You know what I mean? Like, one looks like a bad guy, but like they both kind of looked like an MMA fighter. So I was like, I really can't tell who these people are. But it was even more confusing because in the beginning of the movie, there's one girl, and she like kisses one of the guys, and he's like, yeah, baby, we're going to do this. And then she goes and like kisses the other one on the cheek, and he like hugs her and he's like, I've got this. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck is going on? So in the fight, the main character accidentally kills the other guy, like is just completely, just as the result of the fight. Like he wasn't being extra brutal or anything like that. It's just by pure chance he, kicked the guy and he ended up dying. And, he's like cheering and everyone's like, oh my God, he died. And he's like, oh fuck, what? And I'm like, sure, perfect reaction. Like, I mean, first off, well, we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But then after that, like 15-minute opening scene, you learn that they were best friends
Oh, God
and
damn it.
that this battle was like ha ha ha, we're just gonna play it cool because whoever wins, we're gonna take all the money and just split it anyways because we're best friends and have been for life. And you're dating my sister, and we love each other, and we have nicknames that are the same. And I'm like, those are things you should have told me like first, and then show the fight, because like the
Gives
guy
me a
died, and I
reason
was
to
like,
care.
yeah. Well, because when the guy died, I was like, everyone was like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "It's a fucking MMA fight. Like, isn't this a like? I know it's like a rare occurrence, but like, isn't it a fucking hazard? You're literally bare knuckle punching each other in the face and kicking each other and doing holds. Like, isn't this like?" This isn't wrestling, you're not doing suplexes or anything like fake shit like that. Like, you're literally trying to kill the other, like knock the other person out with your fist. So like the guy dying and like, well, that sucks, but like it's what you signed up for. And then he runs away to Thailand. And just like most movies that take place in Thailand, we've learned from zombie tidal wave is that apparently there are no Thai actors in the world. So you only cast white people. Only white people live in Thailand. And that's all I have learned from the movie industry. But either way, the movie sucked. And that's the end of that story.
Oh.
But we're not here to talk about Hard Target 2. We are here, in fact, to talk about I.O., starring Anthony Mackie. So that being said, hello and welcome to the Never Heard of It podcast. I'm your host, Michael Veit.
And I am Caleb. I got nothing else.
Much like this movie.
You know what? Sometimes it's okay to just be yourself.
It is, yeah. So, yeah. So we did. This is the last movie of the month that we're doing, and we're kind of showcasing movies that had Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie. I wish there was another movie that had both of them in it together. That would have been cool. But
that would have been fun. I felt a little bit bad because we did two movies in a row that had Sebastian Stan in it. But as we talked about last week, Rachel Getting Married only barely counts because he's like he gets like 3 lines at the beginning, and so like it's more funny. And like, yes, he is an important character in We Have Always Lived in the Castle, but like he's not the star. So
right,
I guess like that kind of balances out. Like Anthony Mackie isn't technically the star of this movie, but I mean, there's only 7 named like cast members, and only 2 get any real screen time, and he's one of them. So it's fine. It works.
Yeah, so we're now at this point, by the time you guys listening to this, unless you're a Patreon subscriber, you're listening to this the day before episode 2 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out, because episodes release early on Patreon. But I tweeted about this, and I talked about this, but when Falcon and the Winter Soldier got announced, I was like, cool, I love the Winter Soldier, I think he's really cool. I'm indifferent about Falcon. I was like, he's cool. I didn't dislike him by any means. Like, he still was cool. It's just he was one of those characters that I just didn't put a lot of merit into or thought. I just didn't consider him, basically.
Well, and he's written very much as like a bit player. Like he comes in to like make his one-liners, and then you don't see him for 3 movies.
Well, he's just always on the left of Captain. Like, he's always directly behind, Steve Rogers.
Like I haven't seen it yet. We're a little bit behind because of some other stuff this week. But I like the idea of. At first, I was also very indifferent on this show, but I like the idea of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier paired up together because both of them were very much in the shadow of Captain America, and this is their chance to like find like who they are as individuals, but like putting them together as a team. I can see working very well because they have like different perspectives on who Steve Rogers is / was from different times in his life, and they are literally from different times, and so I like it. And honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about Anthony Mackie as an actor. There are times where I think like it really shines, and there are times when I think like this is probably just bad writing, but like he's not delivering it well. And so like I really I want to see more of him to be able to say like definitively one way or the other, because I think that he's got it. I think he has the talent, and I think he will do really well. I don't think he's been given enough chance to shine.
Yeah, I mean, Altered Carbon season 2, Anthony Mackie is pretty much the main character the entire time.
Oh, that's amazing, because we just started season 1 recently, and so
Oh,
that gets me amped up. I can't wait to see him in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Fucking
So
great show.
Yeah, season 2, he's pretty prevalent throughout the whole season, and he's great in that. As we're going to talk about today, I'm not a fan of this movie.
Oh
I'll say up front,
no.
I feel like there was a lot of weird missteps in this. But Falcon and the Winter Soldier, after episode 1, I was like, I want 3 movies of just the Falcon, exclusively
Okay.
Falcon.
Yeah, and so
I
like
was
that's where
very sold.
that's where I say I think that he get like I think he like in his career, like picture him like wandering down a sidewalk on a like a really nice day, and like he himself is like really like living life and like doing it well, but then like every now and then steps in a big steaming pile of bad lines.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that's really what it is.
which is wild, because when you think of like when you look back at his performances, it is that it's literally like hit or miss. Like some movies you're like, oh wow, dang, and then some movies you're like, oh dang. But I mean, like most notably in 2002, he was Papa Doc in 8 Mile. Like
Jesus,
he
that's
is,
right.
yeah. I mean, he has the fucking, he has completely different hair, but like he's fucking Papa Doc. Like, and then he goes on to do like Hollywood Homicide and a Law and Order episode, and She Hate Me. I think he was the main character in that. But then he was also in $1 Million Baby, and it's like,
she
oh, okay.
She Hate Me was in strong contention for this month. I was looking into that. It looked fun, but I picked this movie because I wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
So there.
And
so
it
there.
almost ended up being Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter too, because he's in that. Yeah.
He's in. I didn't feel like it featured him enough. And I also think that one might have been more difficult to find streaming. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think we had to pay for that one, and
we
didn't seem worth it.
We had a list of like 7 or 8 options that we trimmed down for this month. That like I feel like it's rare that we like have to like cut movies out for the month. We're normally like either like we pick a theme and we find exactly enough, or like we just move it to the next month. But like I don't know. I liked this movie, but I think we're probably going to agree on the reasons why you didn't.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the movie we're talking about is I.O., in reference to the moon. And this movie is a Netflix original. So it is available streaming on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a really small cast. Technically there's only 3 actual actors in it. We hear the voice of one other actor, but we never actually see that person. But the main character of this film is actually Margaret Qualley, who is Andy McDowell's daughter. Like, that's awesome.
Did not know that.
Yeah. And then of course Anthony Mackie are the 2 prevalent film kind of characters in this film, but it really revolves around the character of Sam, ironically enough, coincidentally enough, because he plays Sam in Marvel. I was like, wait, because like she said, like he would say Sam, and I'm like, wait, why are you talking about? Oh, right, no, because you're not Sam in this one.
So if you listen back to a couple of our previous episodes, I think I specifically said that Anthony Mackie plays a scientist trying to save the dying Earth in this movie, which is wrong. That is incorrect. That is not the character he plays. And I am fairly positive now that I went back and looked at the IMDb profile again today, that I made that mistake in my head because the name's Sam.
Right. Yep.
Now, Anthony Mackie's character is, in a lot of ways, no less important, but he is not the scientist trying to save the world. But like, while this is like a really small cast, it is a fucking phenomenal cast.
I mean, three great people.
Sam's father, Henry Warden, right? Yeah, Warden, who's supposedly this famous like doctor or scientist, who like was leading the efforts to renew life on Earth after people have given up on it. Danny Houston,
Yeah.
it's a big name there, and then Elon, Sam's very long distance boyfriend, who has actually left Earth for the IO colony, is played by Tom Paine, who I first was introduced to as Jesus on The Walking Dead,
Yep.
but has been more recently in Prodigal Son, and yeah, that actually the thing he's most recently in. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and of course, Danny Houston for Marvel fans, he is Stryker in the X-Men films. So that's his
yep,
claim to fame. But he was also in Wonder Woman, the movie. He was, I think, one of the generals or something like that in Wonder
yeah.
Woman. So
Yeah, and
uh,
again, he's one of those actors. Like he's been around a while. He's a great actor
yeah,
and has been in some really great shit. I mean, 21 Grams, The Aviator, stuff like that. But like, he's one of those people. Like the moment you see him, you're like, I know that guy.
yeah. So as Super Pod Hero Cast say, he's a that guy actor.
Yep.
Where you're like, oh, that guy. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I mean, and he's only in it, I mean, he has like one line, like one little like speech that he gives, a little back and forth, and it's via a flashback.
Yeah,
So the story, yeah.
he's mostly in it through like voiceovers, so, like recordings of his voice that like were put out to
All right.
people. And I think you were about to get into why.
Yeah, so we'll dive right into the plot. So the story revolves around Sam, but more specifically, we get a little monologue in the beginning of the film that talks about kind of the history of what's happened. So all of a sudden, Earth's atmosphere just is stopped. It's just like, nope, I'm done now, and everything's become toxic. People start dying in their sleep. Animals start dying. Birds start dying. And the bees were the first one. And everybody, and they realize that it's basically the atmosphere is basically just kicking out oxygen and turning into something to the effect of carbon monoxide. But I think they actually specifically say that it's a high level of ammonia
Yeah,
that's causing it, so it tips to ammonia instead of oxygen for
which
the
it,
mixture.
it's interesting. Like I would definitely have appreciated more of like the science behind how the world changed. It's one of the things where like the story can progress without it, but like I did get a little bit hung up early on because it felt at first like it was like a man-made catastrophe, like a climate change sort of thing. Uh, but like I don't I don't know enough about how climate change could cause the atmosphere to turn uh like ammonia.
Yeah,
Like I can
that's the
see
one
like
specifically that I was like, that's a really very specific element to turn into without a scientific explanation.
yeah, like I could see like a buildup of radiation causing the earth to die. I could see like the greenhouse gases that we're already responsible for causing, massive heat up and causing issues with the earth's atmosphere. I struggle with how like the chemical composition of the atmosphere came to be like so heavy the other way, and it plays such an important role that like this again, this we talk sometimes about like the length of a movie and how like some movies need to have things cut out because they're just too long, whereas others deserve to have a little bit more added to flesh them out. I think this is more the latter. Like at an hour and a half, I think they could have given us a couple minutes more of like how we fucked up so badly to make the atmosphere toxic.
Yeah, my biggest issue with this movie, well, one of my issues with this movie is that it was one of those films where it couldn't decide what it was trying to do. Was it trying to be like hey, let's look at the human condition as the last two people on Earth, focus on getting out, basically. Like, what is their exit plan? The exodus, what is their exit plan?
Mm-hmm.
And like, how are they coping and what are they doing? Or is it the sciencey aspect of like, what are they doing to try to keep Earth up and running? Like, what are they, like it couldn't really decide which one, and so it did neither well. Whereas both happened, neither like when we get to the end of the movie, that should have been a thing where we're like, wait, we should probably talk about that, because you were just like, ta-da, and then you were like, but how? And then it
Yeah.
just ended. But at the same time, it's like, well, you could have gone the whole human emotion route. Like you built that up too, like very uncomfortably. You built that up, and you could have just done that. Or you could have just been like, no, I've figured out the formula, math, 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 science, 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 ta-da. And I would have been like, cool, that's fucking dope. But like, you did neither. And so I was kind of like, oh, that's the end of the movie. But I would love a sequel that takes place on the colony, basically,
Yeah.
like, from Elon's perspective, basically.
Yeah, and I think the disconnect that you're talking about, it comes largely from like I said, there's only two real characters that are the focus of the show, and each one of them has a very different perspective on the end of the world. Sam is very much trying to carry out her father's work of trying to find a way to bring the Earth back from the brink. I mean, and again, we should clarify that the Earth is not dying. The Earth has become inhospitable to humans, and she even in the monologue makes the point something to the effect of, in desperation to heal itself, the Earth like tried to shun us.
Right.
Became toxic to get rid of us.
Basically, but I mean, it does say that it killed all life, because at one point, Anthony, she asked Anthony Mackie about the oceans, and he's like, "There's nothing in the oceans. All the fish are dead."
Yeah. So she's trying to carry on her father's work of, finding a species of bee that would be resistant to or immune to the toxicity in the atmosphere, and therefore could go and pollinate plants and like help life continue, and like create enough of a cycle of oxygen and like carbon removal and stuff like that to try to get more breathable air, because she's living up on this mountain outside of a major city where there's still like a pocket of breathable air above the like toxic clouds. Like there's some really great photography
Oh yeah.
where you
Oh,
look
yeah.
out and you see like all the whole valley, and like you can kind of see the skyline in the distance, and like the whole valley where the city is just nothing but these like dense toxic clouds, and then they go down into the city. Have you ever seen the show Life After People?
No, I don't think I have.
I think it was History Channel. They did a series of documentaries of like what the Earth would be like after people, and so like
Oh.
each episode would focus on a different aspect of the Earth reclaiming, of nature reclaiming everything that humans have made. But they would always start with like one day after, 6 weeks after, a year after, 100 years, and like they would go progressively, like how nature would take back the planet.
That's cool.
And it was always really fascinating. And the city sequences, which they never named the city, and like it's like I couldn't tell from the map, so I didn't know if it was like a made up city or if it was supposed to be based on a real one. But the city sequences were kind of they were reminiscent of that show, but also of like a really eerie, like Silent Hill sort of thing, where like everything is foggy and like dark, and like these dense clouds, and it's toxic, it's not breathable, but like it's still,
Or
it's
is it?
quiet, there's no life. um I do like in her research, like she's down in the city, like this is the opening sequence, she's down in the city, and she finds insect larvae that are thriving in this like toxic like puddle. There's like ammonia heavy puddle inside this gas laden city, and like she's finding life that as Ian Malcolm would say, is finding a way. And so like that's her whole focus. And we learn later on that like her father has been dead for a period of time, and she has remained alone, and she's dedicating herself entirely to this idea that if they can just find the right level of immunity for the right species, I don't, I guess the plural of species is just species,
Yeah.
then they can make Earth habitable again, and people can come back. Whereas like the rest of humanity has given up. They've all left. They talk about the 100 ships of the Great Exodus. that all left for this mining facility orbiting the volcanic moon of Jupiter, known as Io, for energy. They gave up on the idea of bringing that energy back to Earth and said, like, this is our colony now, and we'll launch from there off into the stars. And like, she stayed behind it with this idea. They're like, no, 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 we can fix this, and you can come back. Like, this is our home. Why would we give up on this? It's our home.
Yeah. I will say that one of the things that I love the most about this, and that I feel like a lot of movies will go one way or another, and both ways I'm like, really? One way is like, so this is set in the near slash distant future. It never really specifies, but it's said that it's in, that it's not today, it's tomorrow type deal. But they'll either like make things be too futuristic, like there's too many things that are like above futuristic, or they're so in the past that it's like unrealistic. Where you see people like using CRT monitors in like the year 2400, and I'm like, bitch, I couldn't even find a CRT monitor right now if I wanted to, and like I have access to the internet. Like I would struggle to find an old monitor computer. Like, where the fuck are these people finding them to like hack the system? Like I always hate there. It's always one or the other, and this one did a really good job of like, yeah, it's exactly as it is right now.
You know what? They specifically, you talk about monitor technology. They did a great job of. She uses a reasonably modern-ish, as I'm thinking like kind of early mid 2000s era, flat panel, but not necessarily like thin display, and it uses VGA, which, while like long past being the standard, is still readily available. In fact, entirely too prevalent. And so
I was gonna say, I mean, that seems very fitting of probably a very underfunded scientific program. They're like, yes, we'll give you equipment, but it's VGA. Fuck off.
You would find that in like old like legacy like quote unquote enterprise offices and like financial institutions. You would find that in educational institutions and like research places. Like, yeah, it's very believable that someone in like setting up this little scientific outpost up in the hills outside the city, like that was the technology they could get.
Right. Yeah, for whatever their budget was. So we see, Sam, in the same thing, she's riding around on like a little ATV, which, we'll ignore the whole if there's no oxygen combustion engine deal. We'll just ignore that part. So we see her, she collects her data. Obviously she's, she pulls up her audio record and she's like, new audio record, date, blah, blah, blah. This is what we're doing. This is, this current thing. This is my discovery. This is my hypothesis. Okay, cool. She collects her samples. She heads back up and we see her actual facility. She's got a greenhouse, the whole spiel. And this is where we start to get the feel for what it is exactly she's doing, what the goal is, and we see that she's the only person there. So we get the hint that her father has died, but like it's she doesn't I don't think she explicitly says it in the beginning. I think we infer it, but she doesn't actually say it until a moment later.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very obvious that she is all alone here, and like I love the way that they create this feeling of like her being the last person on Earth, by just there being literally no one else around, and like the focus being entirely on her. And then she has these correspondences with her long distance boyfriend Elon, where he keeps saying like we don't even know that she. Well, obviously she had a father, but like we don't know anything about a father because he's not there.
Right.
And then he keeps saying like, you need to leave Earth on the last exodus when the last shuttles leave. Like you and your father need to come. And she'll respond with like, oh, like, yeah, like dad and I are working hard and like, maybe we'll try, or whatever she says. But like she plays along. She doesn't dissuade him of the notion that her father is right there alongside her, like doing the work.
Right.
But he's clearly not.
Right. Yeah, and so we learned that there is only one more Exodus, basically ship planning to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something really interesting about it, is that we never get the indication that there is other people, like that there's other little pockets of people.
Yeah.
In fact, we get we get the sense that there is nobody else, like that there may not even be a ship. Like we really don't know. But so as she's understanding that this is her absolute last, like this is the do or die moment for her. Either she goes to the ship, or she stays here and just works until she figures out something, sends word back. But lo and behold, a man in a hot air balloon comes crashing down in her backyard, and the very first thing that he says, it's Anthony Mackie. He steps out of his balloon and he says, "I need to see Dr. Henry Warden." And let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we will carry on with the story now that it's kind of started of IO.
Looking for something heroic in your life? Go check out our friends at the Superpod HeroCast. They're guys with beers talking about movies with capes. Every episode goes in depth with a different superhero movie. A classic of modern cinema? A certified stinker? It doesn't matter. If it's a superhero movie, they're going to talk about it. Start with a little bit of comedy, add in some film analysis, and finish it off with a heaping dose of geekery. You've got the Superpod HeroCast. It doesn't matter if you're a casual fan or a 20th level nerd. Download their latest episode, grab a beverage, and enjoy the fun. The Superpod HeroCast. Be heroic.
Second Edition 1 is Night Shift Radio's Battlestar Galactica fancast. Each week, Battlestar veterans Caleb and Kitsy revisit, and newcomer to the show, Andrea, watches for the first time the 2004 sci-fi series Battlestar Galactica. They've just entered their third season, which means you've got 2 full seasons of sci-fi gold to binge if you want to watch along with them. Whether you're the commander of a soon-to-be decommissioned battleship, or were recently promoted to president of the 12 colonies. Join Caleb, Kitsy, and Andrea as they make their way through the Battlestar Galactica universe one episode at a time. Watch Battlestar Galactica free on Peacock, and find Second Edition 1 at Second Edition 1 throughout the podcast.com or wherever you get podcasts. Hello and welcome back. Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good over here. Thinking about like, how do you... I should know this. Like, this is not a skill that I need to have. There's no reason really that, like, when I say that I should know this, there's really no reason that I should know this. But I feel like at this point in my life, at almost 40, I should know. How do you steer a hot air balloon? Like, how is that not completely at the mercy of the winds?
I guess it is, because we just, that is a plot point of the movie, is that it basically is to the winds.
But like,
I don't know.
There are so many stories involving hot air balloons traveling specifically to a destination that, like, there has to be some way of having a degree of control on how you get to that destination.
But can you actually travel by hot air balloon though, or is it just kind of like you float in the air? Oh, isn't that cool?
I mean,
but I don't think you can like travel in it.
Again, I don't know, and this is one of those things where, like, there's no reason for me to know, but I also feel like I should.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I feel like requires research, but I also feel like Around the World in 80 Days has probably set this notion in my head that hot air balloon travel was commonplace in the turn of the century. But in the turn of the century, people were like, you fucking idiot. You can't go anywhere in a hot air balloon. You go up in the air, you go ooh ah, and then you come back down, you idiot. Or maybe not. I don't know.
My favorite stories of all time, his Dark Materials. Like, there's a character whose entire thing is like he travels by balloon.
Wizard of Oz.
He gets to where he's going with intent by balloon. I don't know how that works. So, listeners, if any of you out there understand the finer points of aeronauting, of piloting by balloon, please do explain it to us, because we legitimately want to know. And if it's one of those things where, like, this is a pain in the ass and you really should just do the research yourself, like, drop a link, even if it's let me Google that for you, because I guarantee you that by the time you hear this, I will have forgotten to do that.
Yeah, 100%. So especially those of you guys watching on YouTube, if you find a YouTube video about this, please
How
link it
to
down
pilot
below.
an hot air
Yeah.
balloon.
While you're at it, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. And then for everybody else, tweet it at us. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, you can actually see our Twitter handles right below us right now.
How handy.
But if you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, you can tweet at us at the Nahoit Podcast, the NHOIT Podcast. On both Twitter and Instagram. So definitely, tag us in a thing. I want to know we want to know how the fuck do you travel by hot air balloon? Because Anthony Mackie did it, and he had another plan. And later in the movie, he was like, "Fuck, the wind's not doing the thing, so like we can't go to the place." And I'm like, but like, how did you get what are the odds of the wind blowing in the exact direction you need? I mean, there's like, I know there's 4 cardinal directions, but there's like thousands of varying degrees in between like north and east. Like, it isn't just like, I'll go north. Like, there's like north by northeast by degree, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 degrees. And I don't know, man.
Huh. I mean, if you think about it, if you're standing, even if you discount globe, if you're just standing in one point, there are 365 degrees,
Right.
or 360 degrees. Sorry, math and numbers are hard for me. There are 360 degrees in which you could turn and face at any moment, and any one of those are a direction the wind could be blowing at any given time. He lands with precision at exactly this outpost, and then later lands with precision in this park that they look at on a map and decide to go to, with the intent of landing with precision at the takeoff point of the last shuttle. So like, it has to be possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, it's got to be. I mean, it's got to be a thing. Like, I don't know. It's irrelevant. Much.
No, it's extremely relevant.
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. But so Micah, funny Micah.
Hey.
Yeah, so Micah lands and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to see Dr. Warden. Like, what is the reason that he's here to see Dr. Warden? I know he's hearing the transmissions, but like, there's a reason behind it. I mean, because he's not a scientist. Micah's not a scientist.
No, and he gives us a little bit of exposition later on when he finally like opens up to Sam and like tells a story. So he was one of the handful of people that opted not to leave Earth in the initial exodus, and I can't remember if it was specifically because of Henry Warden or if Henry Warden came into play after the fact. But he talks about like, his, like, we heard his transmissions, or like, we heard him talk on the the news, whatever, and like, he gave us hope that there was a plan, that like there was a possibility of saving the Earth and that we should stay. He convinced us to stay, and after he convinced us to stay, I watched dozens of people die of starvation, and my wife died, and he gives this really kind of interesting and fucked up story where it's like, my wife was sick, and like food would have kept her alive, but only for a couple more days, and then the food would have ran out. So like, he basically admits to letting her die so that he could survive, because they were running out of food. Now, like,
Right. Which is like, it's a messed up story, but it's like logical.
Yeah, it is, because like, like, would she have survived? Would she have gotten better? Like, we don't know. Like, was she sick because of the the toxicity in the atmosphere, or was it something else? Like, was she terminal, and was like, it's a whole survival thing, and like,
yeah.
But anyway, he's like, after she died, like, I had to find Henry Warden, and it's unclear if it was like, I need to like just find this guy and like punch him in the dick for being wrong, or
Right.
like I need to find him and like please explain to me like how this was all worth it, like make me understand,
Like, what do I do? Yeah.
I feel like it was more the latter, like, help me understand how this was worth it, and like, what do we do now? Like, can we still stay? Is there still hope? You gave us hope. Is that hope real, or do I need to get on this shuttle and leave?
Yeah, also time is really weird in this one because and this is one of my complaints that I feel like they could have completely they could have completely like knocked this one entire plot line from the whole movie, and I feel like the movie would have been a million times better, and they could have added in more science.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're first talking, she asks him, she was like, "Oh, so you're from the before time,"
Mm-hmm.
implying that he was alive when animals were still around, people were still around. Like he talks about as a kid going to see cities and stuff like that, which then implies that she grew up in an era in which animals were all dead. So, but then they end up hooking up. So like what exactly is the age difference? Cuz like the age difference in the film is like 17 years because Anthony Mackie is like 41 when this was being made and she was 25, I think, or 20. Yeah, she's 25. So there's like a 16-year age difference between them just in like real life movie,
Mm-hmm.
but in the film, like in the story, are we to believe that all of this happened in under 10 years from like the time that like everything was normal until absolute shit, so much so. And now mind you, he remembers it as a kid. He would have had to have been born at a point where she wouldn't have been able to remember it, so maybe there's an overlap of about 4 years where maybe animals existed and she doesn't really remember, but like it's got to be at least 15 years minimum between
But
like
I
age difference.
I think part of the problem is that like he specifically like she asked him like, do you remember what it was like before? And he's like, yeah, when I was a kid. And I think that stands out too much because the rest of what he talks about, like, none of us like we saw that, like, we didn't listen to the scientists like your father, and we didn't listen to the
Right.
evidence of our own eyes, and we saw this happening, but like the future was too unbelievable. The future that we got just like felt too unreal. And so like you get a sense of like he experienced all of this happening in real time, and not necessarily that the world collapsed when he's a kid and then he grew up in this. It's more that like it happened gradually, to the point where like suddenly, like as an adult, realize like
Like, oh shit,
this
there's no
is
more bees.
our world now.
Right.
Like the bees were gone, and then the the plant life started to die, and then slowly the air got more and more toxic, and people started to die. Like their blood started to turn, and like all of these things that they talk about. I feel like had to have happened much more gradually.
Sure.
But like you said, there really isn't a good sense of time. I kind of like that there's not a good sense of time. And that's not to say that a well-defined timeline in a movie like this isn't great, but it lets the narrative be a little bit more vague, and like it lets it spend more time on the people and less on the specifics.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
again, I totally get what your complaint
yeah, I
is, and
mean,
it's valid.
I'm fine with a vague timeline. Like I'm totally fine with that. Movies do it all the time where it's like in the near future and it's like, cool, that could be 5 years from now, it could be 30 years from now, like that's fine. But if that's what you're going to go with, you can't go into detail about things that start dropping hints of age and time, because then people are going to start timelining it in their head and being like, wait a
Hmm.
minute, but
Hmm.
that doesn't make any sense, and that's what I did in this movie, because he spent a very long time going over the timeline, but her not being like, she wasn't born in that timeline. I'm like, wait, dude, how fucking old are you? And then like, I mean, he doesn't go after her, she goes after him, and they do end up, doing stuff, but it's like, how fucking like, how old is she? Like, 'cause she's young. I mean, she is young because she poises herself as a research assistant,
Yeah.
and he never blinks at that. And then when she was like, oh, Henry Warden was my dad, and he was like, yeah, I figured that out, which was really cheesy. But so it's just, I don't know, it kind of made me uncomfortable because I was like, she's really fucking young, and like you're clearly like you were an adult married with kids like this seems really weird.
Yeah. I imagine that she was probably in her 20s, more close to what she was in real life. But yeah, there's no real indication. I feel like if I were going to imagine this scenario happening in real life, I would think that like Micah would have been a kid around the same time as your child, like enough time that like the
Yeah, like
world
right now.
as
Yep.
we know it hasn't changed so drastically, and like we see the early signs and like this stuff is happening now, but like we don't currently have the technology to harvest energy or to create a colony around a distant moon. But like by the time your child is in her like late 40s, early 50s, like we might be there. Like
Right.
maybe we are. So like it feels like this like that kind of is how I establish a timeline for the movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense time wise. So essentially, Micah and Sam, they get together. She basically runs down what she's been doing. She talks about how he's like, "Oh my God, you have fresh vegetables," and she's like, "Yeah, I have a full greenhouse." And she pulls out this giant cornucopia of all these things, and he's like, "Oh my
Those
God, he's just
tomatoes
eating
look
it."
so
Yeah.
good.
Oh, they
I
look so
wanted one
fucking
so
good.
bad.
Yeah. Oh, they look so fresh too.
Uh-huh.
And then she talks about, hey, this is what we're doing. We're specifically studying the bees. And so there are bees because she has honey. They have honeycomb. So they do have like a hive of bees that they've been
Mhm.
working with. Later, and this is where it gets really weird, and this is where, again, like you said, like they could have spent a little extra time, like, again, just remove all of the romantic interest between the two main characters and insert more talk about like what the implications of the science, because at one point, he's like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to go to Exodus. Like, I'm sorry, I'm taking you. This is after he discovers that Henry Warden's been dead, because
Mhm.
she's like, oh no, he's on expedition and he'll totally be back in like a day or two. But then like she slips up a couple of times and he's like, he's fucking dead. How long has he been dead?
Yeah.
And he gets the hint.
Yeah, at one point she says like he would have liked something
Yep.
or whatever. I'm like, you
Yeah,
fucked up right
you
there.
fucked up.
There goes your cover story.
Yep. You can't, don't lie if you can't keep up with it. And and so he was like, listen, like, I'm taking you to Exodus. You don't have a choice in this, but you will thank me later. I'm sorry. And so they're packing shit up to go, and he's going to pack up the honeycombs, and they're like harvesting the honey so that they have it for the trip and stuff like that. And he opens it and he was like, oh shit, and he runs back and he's like, oh my God, Sam, you're never going to believe this, and there's a queen
Mhm.
in the hive. And that was like the thing that they were hoping for, is because without a queen, there's no spawning of the eggs. Like, they're looking for a way for breeding, and it turns out a queen is born. And
Mhm.
she's like, oh my God. And then they never talk about it again.
Just
And
like
it's like, I
this,
feel like that's a big discovery. Isn't that the whole point of this research?
that is the entire focus of their research, is to find a strain of these bees that can be immune and can continue pollinating. And then this happens, and like he's recognizes like this is what you were doing. Like, and he's like, what does it mean? She's like, it doesn't mean anything. Let's just move on. And like you could tell, like in the way that she reacts, she sees how huge this is.
Yeah.
But he's already decided, like, we need to leave and you're coming with me. And she's like, yeah, you're right. I'll come with you. But then like she sees like, I think she's resigned herself at that point, but then she sees this bee and she's not ready to tell him. But like the moment she sees that, like she is right back into like, there is hope for this world and I'm not going to leave. And I think that that's really the true significance of that scene, is like you have to watch her face, you have to watch her reaction, because that's the moment where you see like she makes up her mind and she's not going to go with him.
Yeah, and the lead up to that too is that she's been having her correspondence with her boyfriend Elon,
Mm-hmm.
and at one point he was like, "Hey, big news! There's a planet that's almost identical to Earth. We've basically scouted the mission, and all the people on this space station are basically figuring out who they're going to send, but it's going to take 10 years to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So like." whoever we send, it's going to be a very big deal. It's going to be, this is like a very long-term thing, but this may be the solution. And he ends up getting chosen. And he was like, look, like, you still should come here, like, still come, to Exodus, still take the Exodus thing, but know that, like, I'm gone. Like, at this point, I got chosen. I am going to Alpha Centauri. I'm going to go colonize this new planet. Like, maybe we can be together one day, but it won't be for many, many years. And at that point, she basically has the decision. Like, it's an instant where she was just like, oh, she has her emotional moment, and then she immediately, in a matter of grief. I mean, it very much, she's not like, well, he's done, on to the next. She's very much like, hi, I'm sad, and you're literally the only other human on the planet. Comfort me, and so she has that moment, and that's where and at first he even is like, no, like, I can't do that, and then eventually, they do. But
the like awkward but also like really interesting moment is when he says, I can't, and she says, we have to. And like that, like, again, should be a hint of exactly where her head is like, he is thinking like, I can't do this, like, I'm still, like, honestly, I'm not over my wife, and like, I don't really know you, and like, this is a bizarre situation for me that, like, maybe we shouldn't rush into. And she is still thinking in the mindset of like, we have to heal this planet,
pollinate the planet.
And like, I don't know, I mean, I'm gonna spoil the ending too early if I
I mean, we're getting there. So
we're getting there. We're very, I mean, there is we mentioned there's a very small credited cast. There are 7 characters cast, the 2 main, the voice of Elon, the father, 2 newscasters who have, like, kind of brief appearances, and then an uncredited young boy.
Yeah, so
I saw that before I saw the movie. I was like, well, that's going to be important.
Right. So essentially what happens is, as they're like, all right, we're, fine, we're going to do this. And that she's conflicted about going to the Exodus thing, but she's like, whatever, like, she's pretty much given up, like, the bee thing happens and she's like, of course.
Yep.
And they get a broadcast that basically says, hey, for all you, crazy cats and kittens that are trying to catch the last shuttle off Earth, JK dudes, we just totally moved the launch site to fucking not where you thought it was, and it's a dick to get to. All right, bye. And Anthony Mackie's like, what the fuck, dude? So he's like, they changed where it is. I don't have enough helium. We're still waiting on the wind, but now I don't have enough helium to get us there. Like, this fucking sucks, like, we're stuck here. And she was like, I know where we can get helium. And so they go down to the city to go get helium. And this is that turning point moment. I mean, this is the end of the film. Like, this is the last 10 to 15 minutes of this movie. Where they're scrambling, they ride their ATVs down there, they get a bunch of helium. And she was like, listen, she's, you can see the oxygen tank, like, on her mask, because you have to wear a mask because it's all messed up. She's like, listen, like, you need to get on that ship, like, you need to go and do this, but like, I have to stay here. And he's like, what the, no, what? What do you know? And she's like, no, like, I have to do this. And she's like, listen, if I survive, tell them what I've done, tell them that, we can make Earth better, like, we can do this. And she pulls off her mask, and he's like, what? Because, again, anybody who breathed this air, like, you died because it didn't have the right mixture of oxygen and nitrogen. But she's like, no, like, I'm doing this. I'm taking my scientific risk. And the movie kind of ends right there. And the next moment we get is the boy.
Yeah, she's on a beach, and she's just like, she's doing a narration as though she's writing a letter to Micah, even though, like, so this is where I actually kind of love the way this ends. Like, we know that all of the communication channels between Earth and Io are being shut down when the last Exodus shuttles leave. We know that because of Elon. but she's narrating as though she's writing a letter to Micah on Io and describing the beauty of this like newly revived Earth and like how the poisonous air is gone and it's been replaced with ocean mist, and I can feel the waves on my feet and the breeze in my hair. And then you see it, she doesn't say anything about the kid, but you see the young boy come running up, and he's a little black boy, implying that it's Micah's son, that
Mm-hmm.
she was impregnated the night that they got it. um and I love that they leave us with absolutely no clarity whatsoever on if she was right, if she like took off her mask and survived, and like he left without her, and like she really is like she and her child are the last two people on Earth, and like Earth is recovering as she and her father expected, and maybe one day humans will come back, or if she died there on the spot in the museum and he left her there, and this is all like the last feverish moments of her dying brain.
Yeah. No, that's the only reason, that ending is the only reason why I would keep in the love story. But I feel like they could have had that same ending by doing something different, You're like,
What?
maybe she walks in and there's just like a fuck ton of bees or something, or like you see a flower growing, or you see a fucking fish in the ocean. Like I feel like they could have done it with anything. But I get, it was they were trying to go for that human emotion, but again,
Yeah.
there wasn't enough of it, like either go all in on one or the other, and they didn't. That's my
Yeah.
complaint.
Yeah, they could have done the same ending without the child, thus making the like her
Yeah.
coming on to him and them having sex, which I guess we never did a content warning because they don't show it. Like it's
Yeah, I
not
mean,
it's
there's
not
like a
on screen.
scene of her
It's implied.
showering, and you kind of see her butt, but that, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like not really. It's not sexual. I mean, I guess it is, but it's not. I mean, it's nothing more than you would see on regular TV.
But like they could have done the whole thing like without the child at all, and like you could take or leave the sequence of them having their moment. It I what I struggle with, because I appreciate the way that they did this. What I kind of wanted to see was at the end, like after this kind of dreamy sequence where she's narrating and she's telling him about the waves and the ocean breeze and everything, was for it to fade out on like an overhead shot of her body lying in the museum where he left her.
Right.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted that closure of seeing that, like, no,
Like this
she actually
toxic
died.
ammonia.
But
Yeah.
I also appreciate that they didn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The title of this movie is also really weird. Because IO holds very little actual meaning to the movie, because they're not on IO,
Yeah, the
because
colony is
you can't be
orbiting
on
Io.
IO. It's literally just volcanoes. Like you
Yeah.
can't live on our, but it's orbiting that area because it's like a sweet spot, I guess, where they're like in a geothermal pocket, so they don't
Hmm.
have to worry about heating. They're too far away or whatever. But it's like they're, and the thing is like the people on the spaceship aren't even going to Io or colonizing Io. They're going to Alpha Centauri, and even the people leaving Earth aren't even going to Io. They're going to the space station. So like Io is like a technicality. So like the title of the film is really weird, because it's like you could have named it anything in relation to the story, but the fact that you named it IO when IO doesn't matter is really weird to me.
Well, the part that kind of makes that interesting is that she, who grew up in this, like mostly in this world after life has collapsed, like she sees remnants of, we'll call it the before time, of like she's very fascinated by this museum exhibit at the Museum of Art,
Oh right. Yep.
that was on mythology, and like statues and paintings and stuff like that, and like specifically she sees uh this advertisement for part of the exhibit on Leda and the Swan, the story of Leda and Zeus, and so like she asks Micah, who was going to be a teacher before. So again, why I think that he was fully an adult when the world completely went to shit, because he had hopes and dreams and plans. She asked him to explain various myths to her, and while she's like thumbing through a book on mythology, she comes across a story of Io and Jupiter. Jupiter being the Roman name for Zeus, so like the king of the gods. And so I think like the and again it maybe could have been explored a little bit more. I think the mythology component was as much the importance of Io as the moon of Jupiter. They mention Io a lot. Like Io itself, like it could have been, they could have gone to Saturn and gone to Titan or Europa or whatever. Like they could have gone to any moon in the solar system, and like that could have been where humanity found their source of energy. And so yeah, it is unclear why Io was significant with that. Like they couldn't go to Io, and they didn't explore the significance of Io in Roman mythology. So like,
yeah, I felt like there definitely was an Io Jupiter like thing they could have gone into mythology wise, and they just sort of like they kind of like maybe they planned on doing that and they set it up that way, and then we're like, ditch it.
Io was one of the mortal lovers of Zeus.
Oh yeah. So maybe that's like what they were trying to tee up with Micah, and that she's Zeus, he's Io. Would she be Jupiter and he would be Io? Because she's the one staying here creating life, or would she be Io and he would be Jupiter?
I guess she would have to be Io.
Yeah.
If you're going literal, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of possibility in this movie, and that's again why I think that like it could have dealt with being a little bit longer to explore that more.
Yeah, agreed. So should you watch this movie? I think if you have any sort of end of the world, climate change, pseudo sci-fi or sub sci-fi like kind of inklings, and if you are an Anthony Mackie fan, yes, totally. If that sort of thing is like indifferent to you, no, you will not like this movie and you will find it boring. So this is definitely the type of movie that you watch with the entire purpose of thinking about it a lot afterwards. This is not a movie that you watch to be like, oh, they said this, they did this, that was the end result. This is one of those movies that were like, oh, but if they did this, then they could have done this. But I wonder what that means for, like, that's one of those movies, where you basically fill an hour of a podcast talking about.
I also really appreciate that it's a slow burn. It's like very character focused. They could go more into these two individual characters and tell us more about them, but because there are so few characters, you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to understand who everyone is and like why they relate. So most of the focus is on Sam, so when Micah just drops in, like he'll give you his backstory when he's good and ready, but like you don't need to know about him just yet. Like I like the way that a movie like this can be paced, and that you can kind of spend time like just kind of understanding the world that Sam is in. Like she spends so much time alone that you kind of get to feel that solitude in like her opening sequences, and I like that. And like I've always been kind of a sucker for these weird like sad dystopic like last person on earth sort of like one of the earliest sci-fi movies that I can remember watching, and it like deeply traumatized me, but like I still think about it to this day, was I think called This Quiet Earth. And it was a very similar thing where like one day like a guy wakes up and like he's the only one left on earth, like everyone else has just disappeared. It turns out there's at least two more people, but there's no one left, and like what do you do? Yeah,
Right.
like this is a completely different take on that concept, and that fascinates me.
Pretty interesting. All right, so thanks a lot for joining us, everyone. So this one, by pure coincidence, ended up being a really great bridge to our theme for next month.
Yeah.
And our theme for next month is alien invasions. So we kind of had this really great stepping stone where we're going to step right into, and I don't know where it's going to fall on the calendar, but we are doing fucking jujitsu, starring Nick Cage, where an alien from another dimension comes to Earth and challenges people in jujitsu, and it's fucking dope.
This
I
is
can't
going to
wait.
be a great month.
It's gonna be a great month.
I love Alien Invasion Month, and we haven't done one in a while.
We haven't. It's going to be pretty exciting. So look forward to that. Of course, head over to our website at thenahoit.com. But thanks a lot for listening, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Thumbs up.